Hello, in this training module, I'm going to be walking you through how to set up and configure a file dynamic security lockdown policy. So to get you familiar with my lab here that I have set up for training, I have file dynamics installed on this Windows 2019 server, and I also have the file dynamics admin client installed here, which you see on the screen right now. And then I have another server where my data is, the HQ server, and we're going to be locking down the finance folder on this server, and this server also has the Phoenix agent installed on it. And then the other thing is the Windows 10 workstation. This workstation has a email client on it, and I'm logged in here to this workstation as Troy Davis. Troy Davis is going to be the security data owner, responsible for the security of the finance data, and also have the File Dynamics Data Owner client installed on this workstation as well. So let's switch back over to the File Dynamics server. Now I have a shortcut here out to the HQ data. Now the first thing you'll want to do before you configure a lockdown policy is work with the security data owner, the people that can confirm and validate who should have access to that, and make sure you have the permissions set correctly on those folders. So let's go out to the finance folder and take a look under finance, properties, security. You can see that here's compliance has access, direct access, so it's not being inherited. The finance department, finance data owners, and then the administrators and system. So this is once you verify that the permissions are correct, then you can go back and then we'll start creating the file dynamics policy. Notice that we have inheritance disabled here on the finance folder, and that is so that permissions can't be inherited down from parent folders like departments. And then under finance, we have some subfolders, and if we go into here, you'll be able to see under security that inheritance is enabled, so all the security is flowing down from the parent above, which is the finance folder that we're going to put the lockdown policy on. So once you get your security and everything set up and verified with the security data owner, the next thing you're going to do is we're going to go back to File Dynamics, the admin, and then you want to go to Target Driven, and then select Policies, and then New Security Lockdown Policy. So I'm going to call this one Finance, and I'm going to go ahead and enable the policy since we've confirmed the permissions are what they need to be before we lock it down. Now I'm going to browse out to the finance folder, and then the email recipient is going to be Troy Davis. And here you can see that if I disable include security events here, the basically events associated with remediative actions are always reported. So we'll always report if we make a change. In other words, the lockdown policy, you gave someone access that shouldn't. We do the scan and we remove that access. You'll always get reported on that anytime an action takes place. Now, if you want to report on all the different security change events that you can report on include share permissions changes, ownership changes on a folder, group membership. If someone gets added to the finance department or removed, you can get notified. Inherited ACEs would be any parent folders such as departments and HQ in this example, and any directly assigned ACEs are always reported on. So you can say that's grayed out. So there's not an option to deselect that. Now, data cleanup, how long do you want to retain the history for notification changes? The default is 90 days, so you need to work with the customer to determine how long do we need to retain this data. And then retain job entries, those are the jobs that get queued up, and how often you want to retain those and roll those over, and you'll see those jobs as we get them queued up in a minute. Now I'm going to add my data owner in here. So for this training, I'm going to be putting in Troy Davis as the data owner. And there's an option here, can enable policy. If you enable this, this allows Troy Davis as the security data owner to be able to go in, disable the policy, make new changes that might need to be added or removed from the finance data area, and then basically re-enable that policy so that those changes now go into effect as the baseline lockdown for finance. And we'll go through that in a little bit. Now, the next thing we want to do is schedule. You can schedule to monitor and certify and remediate any changes for access, basically monthly, weekly, daily, or even down to to an hour that you're monitoring this location. So I'm going to go ahead and select. I'll just take the hour here and hit apply. Now, once we apply the policy, the next thing you need to do is go out and execute an initial security scan. Okay, so once you execute this scan, it's going to go out and basically scan the finance folder and subfolders and even the shares and everything, the parent folders, and it's going to put that in the SQL database as a part of the baseline lockdown for this policy. And if you go to jobs, you'll be able to see that that's been queued up to the agent. Go ahead and it's pending. Now it's complete. So it got queued up to the agent, delegated, and now it's complete. So that basically gets that initial baseline set for this finance policy. And if you go out to notifications, this is convenient within the admin client. You'll see the security lockdown policy, and there's no data available because there's been no changes since we set the initial baseline. Now, next thing we want to do is we want to go out and test this policy. So to do that, let's go out to the finance folder, and I'm going to select Properties, Security, Advanced, and I'm going to go in, let's add a user in. I'm going to add eBarnes, and I'm going to give eBarnes modify access to the finance folder. All right, so we'll go ahead and apply that. Next, let's go into the finance to a subfolder, Data, and select Properties, Security Advanced. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show how we can reset control flags, which is pretty nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable inheritance. I'm going to convert inherited permissions into explicit assignments. So now we've got explicit assignments for each one of these objects to the finance data folder. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to remove compliance. So kind of keep this in your memory bank here because we're going to do a second scan and show how we can basically go out and remediate these changes, even down to disabling inheritance. So the next thing we'll want to do once those changes occur, we'll go ahead and issue another scan right now. And now that one's going to get queued up in the jobs. We see it's pending. In a second, it's going to get delegated. See, it's now delegated to the Phoenix agent that's running on the server where the HQ share is, and then do a refresh, and it's complete. So at this point, let's switch over to the Windows 10 workstation, select it, and we can see we have a security change detected for policy finance security lockdown policy, and then it says please sign into the data owner client to view the details. So with that, we're going to, I'll minimize this and I'll launch the data owner client. I'm logged in to this workstation as Troy Davis, so it's going to read the policies that have been configured and set up for Troy Davis, which for this training is just the finance security lockdown policy. Notice the disable button here that is enabled based on the policy settings. I'm going to select notifications here. Go ahead and expand this out for us. And you can see here the notifications that came in for the finance security lockdown. We can see there were 6 events that came in, 6 actions that took place, and security descriptor flags were set. And that's where I disabled inheritance on the data folder. Now, if you want to look at the details, we can look at all the details, or you can even filter and say, I just want to see actions that took place here uh, based on that. So we're just going to look, let's just look at the actions. We'll filter it based on that. And let's run a file system events report. And go into report data. And then we'll be able to see here's the path to finance. This is where I added eBarnes right here. eBarnes got added in, and then he basically got removed because I'm only looking at the action. So we're not showing the add eBarnes. We're just showing the action that took place for removing access, remove ACE. And then underneath here, we see some other things happening to the data folder. And this is because we disable inheritance. All right, so what it ended up happening, it ended up setting direct permissions at the data folder. So it removed those ACEs from each one of those objects here. eBarnes had access down below there, and each one of these got finance data owners got removed. And the last thing in this list is we reset the control flag, okay, to basically re-enable inheritance down through there. So if we close this out and actually go back and look at the actual data out here under finance, properties, security, advanced, we can see here that eBarnes got removed from that. And if I go into the data folder, properties, security, advanced, well, remember we disabled inheritance and it set direct permissions. Now you can see all that's been set back. Compliance now has access again, and it's all being inherited from the finance folder. So I think that's pretty impressive, the fact that even if somebody comes in and breaks inheritance and removes access, we'll go back in and basically remediate that and get everything set back up based on the policy settings. So that's just an initial test. So it gives you an idea of the power of the remediation and taking action to get things configured and put back based on the policy settings. The next thing we're going to do is over in the data owner client, we're going to go back to the policy, and let's say that there's been a request by the executives to give them access to the finance department data. So what I'm going to do, what the data owner, security data owner would do, they would come into the data owner client, disable the policy, then they would go out and make the changes. So let's go out to finance, and maybe they just need access to the data folder. So we'll go into properties, security, edit, and then we'll give the executives access, and they just need read access to the data. And then once you complete that, you'll go back to the policy, and then Troy in this case would click the enable button, and you want to make sure you reset the policy baseline, which will basically put those new changes into effect. So we'll go ahead and select enable there. So what that's doing at the engine, we should see if I do a refresh on the jobs here, we should see that now has been queued up. So it's doing that once we reset the baseline, it's now doing the scan in order to store that in the SQL database as the new policy lockdown for the baseline. Go ahead and do a refresh, and that's complete. So once you do that, you would just want to go back out now and verify out on the HQ server here under finance data. Once we reset the baseline, we should be able to see now that executives is in the policy, and we've run the scan and set this as the new baseline. So now it's locked down to these new permissions that are set on the finance data. The last thing I want to cover with you is That was the process for basically making changes to the lockdown baseline and then reestablishing those using the data owner client. It is possible to do that also with the admin client. So to do that, you would go to the policy, and these are basically the steps that you would follow. You would go into edit the policy. You'd want to disable the policy, okay, and apply that. Next, you would go in and make the changes. So let's say that I go into departments, finance, properties, security, and I'm going to uh, give compliance different permissions. So I make the change that I want to make. You then go back to the policy. You would execute, reset the baseline on the policy. Once you have that done, you go back into the policy, enable it, hit apply, and then come back and execute a new scan so that the new baseline is now stored in the SQL database. So a few more steps to follow if you're going to be using the admin client, but it is possible to do that. It's actually much easier to do it. Just go into the data owner client and to reestablish that and set a new baseline for the lockdown. So with that, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.